Hey, what's up? One of the first things that players noticed right away was a weird sound issue with the executioner monster affix. If you were out in the world and that affix triggered, you might have been hit with this constant looping sound that just didn't stop. And it was one of those small things that was more annoying than game breaking, but still something you didn't want constantly blaring in the background. With this patch, that's finally fixed, so now the sound only plays when it's supposed to, which might sound like a minor thing, but trust me, you'll notice the difference when you're running multiple zones or grinding objectives. Another thing that was messing with progress for some players had to do with the silent chests in Hantu. If you were doing the Test of Luck seasonal objective, some of those chests weren't actually counting toward the total for your rank, which could make that objective take way longer than it should. The patch specifically targets that issue, and now those chests count properly, so people grinding for that bonus or that rank are going to have a more reliable experience. There was also a pretty notable fix for Zagral in the Dark Citadel. For a while, players were reporting that when you defeated him, there were times where no loot dropped whatsoever, which is obviously a problem when you're trying to run content and earn rewards. This patch fixes that, so Zagral will now drop loot as intended when defeated, making the whole dungeon run feel worth your time again, rather than just being a frustrating loop. Now, if you've been doing tower runs, another thing that could throw you off was how some of the tower bosses had wildly inconsistent health pools. One boss might feel like a cakewalk, the next one might feel like it had boss level HP even compared to its intended tier, and that kind of inconsistency can throw off pacing and team planning. This patch standardizes those health values so you're facing a fairer curve across the board, rather than random swings that might make runs either laughably easy or surprisingly brutal. Something that doesn't get talked about a ton but affects your social experience is the leaderboard issue, where trying to view an entry for someone with a private profile could cause an error. That's awkward when you're trying to check who's topping the charts or scout your competition, so it's great that has been resolved too. There are a few other patches here that help with progression and challenges. For example, resetting Masterworked gear will now correctly unlock the Recycled Works challenge. Before this change, that wasn't working reliably, so people were missing out on challenge progression. And co-op rewards for defeating all the lesser evils now distribute correctly to all players, which means everyone in your group is guaranteed to get what they earned, rather than maybe only the host or only some of the party. Blizzard also mentions fixes in other smaller areas that aren't always called out individually in patch summaries. Things like XP bugs related to divine gifts where progression could stall, and cosmetic items showing up as locked, even when you own them. There were also placeholder wardrobe assets that got removed, which should clean up some of the visual weirdness you might have noticed when browsing your options. It's one of those patches that isn't flashy, but it really tidies up a lot of rough edges and makes the overall gameplay feel more intentional and consistent. When you spend an hour playing and you're not running into odd behavior from chests not counting or bosses with weird health values, you're able to focus more on what makes the game fun, rather than fighting against bugs. So yeah, while there isn't new content or major changes in this update, these fixes do a solid job of refining the experience for pretty much every type of player, whether you're a casual dropping in for quests or someone grinding towers and seasonal objectives. They've tightened up a few core progression problems and smoothed out some quality of life issues that a lot of people had been running into, making the overall experience feel more polished and reliable.